When we talk about ancient Greece, so much of that is filtered through the lens of Athens. Democracy was invented by Athens. The Persian Empire tried to conquer Greece but was defeated by Athens. They tried again but were locked out for good by Sparta and Athens. The first empire to span the Aegean Sea was created by Athens. The biggest war in ancient Greek history was fought between Sparta and Athens. The arts of philosophy, theater, and oratory were cultivated and hit their peak in Athens. Diogenes peed in the street and spit on rich people in Athens. Not as important as the others, but you see the trend. The tale of classical Greece at the height of its glory and impact on world history is essentially delineated by here's when it's the Athens show. From the creation of democracy in 508 BC to the defeat and conquest of Athens and its allies in 338 by the upstart kingdom of Macedonia. In the 400s, Athens was the capital of an empire, and in the 300s, it was the capital of Greek culture. Athens has more than earned its time in the spotlight of history. But right now, I want to look everywhere else. Frankly, anywhere else. So, to understand classical Greece as more than the 170-year-long Athenian power hour, to instead zoom out and see the shape of the whole Greek world, let's do some history. Now, while Athens is off gallivanting into empire and infamy in the 400s BC, what are we looking at instead? Fantastic question, I'm so glad I wrote it that way. Allow me to reframe the story of the classical period. We typically think of it as the century and a half when Greece gets bigger, grander, the height of excellence, but we can also trace this period as the failure of the polis system. Since the 700s, the essential unit of Greek civilization was the city-state, the polis, that self-sufficient combination of an urban core and its surrounding farmland. For 3 centuries, precious few governments in Greece were bigger than a city, and they didn't need to be. But when Persia came around, the world got real big, real fast. In 546, the Achaemenid Persian Empire conquered the cities of the Ionian coast, and there was precisely nothing any of them could do about it. They bristled under Persian authority and made themselves tricky to govern, even launching an open revolt in the 490s, but neither they nor their allies across the Aegean had the means to stand up to them. The cities were just too small. Persia recognized this and went over to one of those distant revolt enablers to teach them what for. Except, shock and surprise, Persia got their asses handed to them because, oh by the way, that was the Battle of Marathon. Just by the numbers, little old Athens should not have won that battle, so when it came time for round 2 a decade later, they needed more than some good battle tactics and another lucky break. Winning the Second Persian War and preventing Greece from getting squished into an imperial province took the combined effort of the most powerful militaries in Greece working together, which they had to that point never done on that scale. It's such a crucial chapter in Greek history because it was the first time they faced an existential threat. Sure, there's the danger of entire cities getting burned to the ground, which did indeed happen, but becoming subjects of Persia also meant overwriting the Greeks' identities as citizens of their polis. Even in victory against the Persians, that core danger would not go away forever, and any one city alone did not cut it. That's why so many cities were eager to ally with Athens or Sparta in a mutual defense league. In a world of big scary empires, try making one of your own. Athens' Delian League campaigned against Persia on and off in the following decades, including a brief foray into Egypt, but for the next 50-ish years, Greece was safe from outside invasion. But this of course brings us to the problem. After Bluetown and Redsville over here carved up mainland Greece and the Aegean, the primary threat switched from Persia to each other. An empire way over the sea is nowhere near as scary as one you can see just across the bay, and each team was willing to put the maximum squeeze on the cities beneath them to protect against the other. That'll blow up in a minute, but even before then, it was a raw deal for the small cities whose territory, manpower, and wealth supported those big empires, because their dearly cherished autonomy got flattened anyway. In 471, the island of Naxos tried to ditch the Athenians, but when Athens forcibly brought them back in line, everyone realized, oh, cool, this isn't an alliance, this is a protection racket. Got it. Other cities would try their luck excusing themselves from the party, but neither imperial master was allowing any of it. When war inevitably did erupt between Athens and Sparta, for the second time actually, it meant nearly 3 decades of conflict all across the Greek world. Now, Greeks were no stranger to killing and dying for their home polis, but the wars of centuries past were local and quick. This was a sustained, multi-decade slog with massive armies and navies all over Greece, fighting pitched battles and protracted sieges, all of which could only be supported by squeezing a vast amount of resources from allies and then burning it year after year after year on the war. While the immediate loser of this Peloponnesian War was Athens, everyone was worse off for it. Not just before and during the fighting, but long after the war as well. See, when Sparta finally bested Athens in 404 BC, it confiscated the Athenian Empire for itself and began collecting tribute from Athens' former subjects, sharing none of it with their long-suffering allies. Sparta promised an age of freedom, but what they actually did was monopolize imperial exploitation. Part of their strategy was to install military governors called harmosts in conquered cities, to prevent any of their subjects from taking an interest in that icky Athenian democracy. Yuck, assuring their dominance by casually destroying the political fabric of Greece. The polis was no longer the essential unit of society or the vessel through which citizens expressed their identity, but an instrument of control for exploitative overlords. Far from returning to a comfy polis age equilibrium, the new normal after the Peloponnesian War was a game of hegemony. As we enter the 300s BC, one state alone was the biggest power in Greece. Notably, the exact outcome Greeks feared from Persia a century earlier and went to extreme lengths to avoid. But this new world order was not as rigidly monopolar as it appeared because Sparta's dominance would prove extremely fragile. Unfortunately for the boys in red, Greece was about to play a rousing game of Deck the Leader, where old rivals put aside their differences to absolutely clobber whomever was currently on top. Round 1 began with Sparta's allies Thebes and Corinth furious to be cut out of the victory spoils and willing to ally with anyone to get revenge. Not just their old adversary Athens, but existential enemy number 1, Persia. See, the Persians were thrilled to finance Greece's interstate slap fights and keep the heat off themselves. No need to conquer the Greeks so long as they were constantly squabbling. So when Athens started doing a little too well in the war, no trouble at all. Persia just switched allegiances, backed Sparta, and forced peace negotiations with everyone ending weaker than they started. In Persia's book, that's an absolute win, and that simple yet oh so effective playbook would continue working across the next 3 decades. Round 2 kicked off in 378 with 2 separate flashpoints. First was Athens recreating the Delian League by inviting its current and former allies back into the team, and second was Thebes successfully ousting the Spartan Harmost and his garrison from their city. Later that decade, in 371, Thebes accomplished the unthinkable by beating Sparta in a hoplite battle and then muscling into Sparta's own turf to put them in baby jail. Thebes liberated Sparta's enslaved population of Helots and gave them a city in their home region of Messenia, cleanly depriving the Spartans of their main source of agriculture and saddling them with a fiercely hostile city right next door. Several actually, as Thebes also organized an Arcadian League in the central Peloponnese to keep Sparta thoroughly boxed in from the north as well. That's an impressive turnaround, but Thebes is, looking pretty powerful right about now. Pretty threatening, I might say, if I were an Athenian. So, of course, round 3, Athens and Sparta versus Thebes, meeting at the Battle of Mantinea, which was the largest hoplite fight in Greek history and a rare double knockout, with Thebes losing its star general Epaminondas and Sparta losing most of its army. So here, in 362, all sides were utterly exhausted. No new hegemon could take the Thebans' place, and by the time there was one, this cycle would just repeat all over again, to the supreme delight of the Persians. From that perspective, this cycle seems endless, and the classical era overall looks to be a pretty dire stretch for those poor self-sabotaging Greeks. Don't worry, it was, but it's more than just a bad time. This era sees the step-by-step, agonizing obsolescence of the city-state, the force that organized and defined ancient Greek civilization up to this point. That's the tragedy hidden just beneath the Athenian golden age of the 400s, and that offers some key context for what comes next. 3 years after Mantinea, Philip II becomes king of Macedon and enjoys the luxury of conquering Greece at its absolute weakest. Still impressive, certainly, but far less of a surprise. That's one read on the situation, but there is another. This whole process started when the world around Greece got bigger. Persia was a big threat, so the Greeks created something bigger than the polis to meet it. Ouch times ensued, but by the death of Philip in 336, Greece for the first time found itself in the shape of an empire, a shape it would retain for 1500 years. The tragedy of the classical period is Greeks trying to preserve their civic way of life yet diving headlong into its undoing, so their culture had outlived their society, but the irony of the era is that culture actually outgrew society. See, the golden age of Athens in the 400s was plenty spiffy, but the 300s arguably outshine it, taking what Athens started, expanding on it, and spreading it so these accomplishments would last beyond the fortunes of whichever city was playing hegemon for a decade. This century is where we see the founding of entire schools of philosophy, the proliferation of history as a genre by Thucydides and Xenophon, the empirical study of political science, oratory as an art form in the speeches of Demosthenes, formalized medicine from Hippocrates, new comedy in the plays of Menander, plus plenty more pottery, sculpture, and architecture all across Greece. In the 300s BC, Hellenic culture was accelerating, so when the Macedonian Empire shows up and Alexander the Land Expander does his thing, Hellenism adapts seamlessly to the new shape and scope of the Greek world. I don't think it would have gone that smoothly if the polis were still as strong an institution and an identity as it was before. The atrophy of the polis left an undeniable void, but that posed an opportunity for a new kind of Hellenism to take its place. In this case, a bigger kind. So where does all that leave us? The classical period was a fleeting triumph for Athens and Sparta, a lasting tragedy for the polis, and a triumph in waiting for the Greek world that would follow. I'm not getting emotional, I just have an abiding love of civics. And clearly a lot to process. Did you ever hear the tragedy of classical Greece the wise? I thought not. It's not a story the Athenians would tell you. It's an Aegean legend. Classical Greece was an ancient society so powerful and so wise it could use the polis to influence the citizens to create culture. Well, I could have saved you 10 minutes just by telling you that. Ah well, see you in the next video.